Hey everyone, George here. Hope everyone's good out there. I just wanted to sit down real quick and have a conversation with you about a movie from the mid to late 90s, the really good creature feature, honestly. I want to talk to you about the 1997 film, The Relic. This film was directed by Peter Hyams. Also, this movie is adapted from the novel Relic, which was written by Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child. This film stars Penelope Ann Miller, Tom Sizemore, James Whitmore, and Linda Hunt. Also, the rest of the cast was pretty good in this movie too. There was no bad performance, honestly. Every single character in this movie was very entertaining. Also, the selling point, like the main point of this film, is the creature in it. And it's honestly a really cool looking creature. And the creature was created by Stan Winston and his studio. You know Stan Winston. He did the creature effects for Jurassic Park, Aliens, The Terminator, Terminator 2, The Thing, Predator, even Leviathan, which is a movie I talked about earlier. Real quick, I don't plan on spoiling this movie for you, and I don't want to, because I think you should absolutely see this movie. But let me tell you the synopsis of this film. Set in Chicago, a detective and an evolutionary biologist try to defeat a large man-eating creature that calls the Field Museum of Natural History its home. As I was saying earlier, the creature in this movie is really the draw for this film. You know, I don't want to spoil too much, and this is very early information in the movie. In the film, there's a fungus that grows on a plant that when an animal consumes it, the fungus goes into the body and latches onto its DNA and starts mutating them into a weird homunculus-like creature. For example, the creature in this movie has DNA from like multiple types of animals. Has DNA from a tiger, has DNA from a spider, a gecko, even a human. So it has all these different animal and even human DNA inside of it. It has these really cool body features and facial features. So this face it kind of has the mouth of the Predator from the Predator movies. And its body is like this big dinosaur-like lizard body. So it like kind of like mixes together like what happens if you take one of the dinosaurs from Jurassic Park and put the Predator head on it. It definitely is a mishmash of a bunch of things into one, and it's really cool looking. So they shot this in Chicago at the Museum of Natural History over there in Chicago. There is a story behind this. Apparently, the studio wanted to shoot at the Museum of Natural History here in New York City, but apparently the head of the Museum of Natural History in New York City didn't like the way that the museum heads in the film were portrayed. They were kind of snooty and arrogant, and they didn't like that. And they also thought that putting a monster set in their museum would actually scare children away from their museum. So the Museum of Natural History in New York City said no. But in the end, it all worked out because it worked way better in Chicago. There was more space there in front of the museum in the one in Chicago because there, you know, later on in the film, when the creature's going loose and wild in the museum, there's a lot of like rescue squads and police vehicles that like rush to the front of the museum. So there's a lot of space for like set pieces there, as opposed to the Museum of Natural History in New York. You know, the roads are tighter. You know, New York City streets are tighter streets. So I think it definitely worked better for them shooting at that museum in Chicago. So as I was saying, there was a lot of rescue vehicles and police vehicles in front of the museum in the movie later on in the film when the monster kind of goes loose. So without spoiling too much, the security system in the museum triggers and locks up the museum. So these giant steel doors just close up all the entry points into the museum. So you have like fire trucks and you have all these police vehicles and even helicopters flying overhead interacting with this museum. That's what's cool about this movie is in other monster movies, you may have a monster who's like bent on destroying the world or just a really powerful monster, and you end up just having like a handful of people, sometimes even one person, just combating this creature. But that's not really how you had it play out. You had these rescue teams dropping down from the roof of the museum, and they had to interact with the monster. So you had this monster interacting with more people than just the people stuck inside. You had them interacting with rescue teams that were actually trying to infiltrate the museum. And simultaneously, while that was going on, they had the rescue teams and the fire department trying to cut open these giant steel doors. So you know, it wasn't only these people just interacting with this monster. It was like a whole city of trying to rescue the people inside. So it was actually pretty neat. You know, at the end of the day, I don't want to, this is without spoiling anything, at the end of the day, people definitely who were not inside the museum definitely caught glimpse of the creature. And speaking of people catching glimpses of the creature, I've read somewhere that people were complaining that this movie is too dark, like visually too dark. I think it works. I don't think the movie's too dark. I think it actually works in its favor. You know, when they're in like dark hallways and dark tunnels and all they have is a flashlight and the flashlight lights up the face of the creature or you catch glimpses of things, I feel like that works in its favor because, yes, the monster is really cool in this movie, but I think they used it sparingly. I think if you looked at it too much, you'd be like, okay, here's the monster with its teeth. But because it was dark, and some scenes you literally can only see the creature or anything going on in the scene by the light of a flashlight, I feel like that really worked. It set the atmosphere and definitely made the creature and the situation feel more dangerous. And that's another thing, is the people that are stuck in the museum having to deal with this monster were actually very entertaining. Usually when you're watching a movie that involves a monster, the people are just filler. Like the main characters are just filler. You're just waiting for the monster to show up, for the monster to attack. And this time, like, I was okay with the monster just showing up when it wanted to and then leave when it wanted to. I was perfectly okay with that. Because the characters are fun. Yes, the characters were archetypes, but they were very entertaining and they were fun. I really did enjoy them. So I didn't really feel like, all right, when's the monster coming? Looking at my watch, I was actually just enjoying seeing these characters move through the shots. And then when the monster came, it was a reward for you just sitting down watching this fun adventure play out in front of you. Also, if I do have one complaint for this movie, and you know, it's a very minor complaint, is the monster felt like it was everywhere. In fact, it felt like there was more than one monster in this movie, because sometimes the monster was on one side of the museum, and then a scene later, it was on the complete opposite side of the museum, in a complete opposite area of the place. So I don't know if there were scenes or shots just cut out for pacing reasons, but definitely it felt like the creature just teleported all over this museum. But you know, that's a small complaint. All in all, it's a really fun movie. So, minor spoiler alert. If you don't want to be spoiled with anything in this film, I would say skip ahead. But it's not a real big spoiler. I'm not going to reveal too much. But later on in the film, it comes down to the detective and the evolutionary biologist combating this creature. And the detective decides to be a hero. And he locks the scientist in her like lab area and saying like, I gotta go end this. I'll defeat this thing. And then the woman on the other side is like, don't be a hero. Don't be stupid. And then he goes off to go fight this creature. Actually, what happens is he ends up locking her in with the creature, and she has to combat the creature in the end. So it was kind of funny was that he was trying to be a hero, but he was really like making things very difficult for the character he was trying to save. It's kind of funny. So that is the movie The Relic. You know, honestly, it was a ton of fun. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it rewatching it now. I enjoyed it back in the day when I saw it for the first time as a kid. It's a really just fun, solid monster movie. So if you're just like free one evening and you want to watch like a good, solid monster film, I say check out The Relic. You won't be disappointed. Bye.